All right, welcome, boys and girls, back to another episode of the IDP Plus podcast. And tonight I'm joined by normally my handsome co-host Matt Record is here, unavailable tonight, as you'll see his beautiful face doing a solo episode on the defensive back tiers. I have an equally handsome co-host tonight,
There
and
it
my
is.
good friend Michael Sicoli. How's it going, Mike?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. I got a little bit worried with that intro there, but we got a beautiful co-host, and tonight you're stuck with this guy. But,
Never.
We got a great lineup of tiers to be jumping through
Yeah.
tonight.
You excited to talk some tiers with us tonight?
Oh yeah. It's the best way to draft, Steve. It's because you get to realize the players before you lose out on that tier. You could wait a little bit longer if you know what tiers are. So, being able to use these using, the shows like this and content that we have with IDP guys is such an advantage in your draft.
Yeah, so tonight we've got for you defensive line / edge rushers for your redraft leagues, and we're tiering them out. So this is content we're bringing you from idpguys.org. Got lots of really great stuff this season coming for you. We have launched some really exciting new tools already, and are going to continue to do that throughout the year and into next year's season. So I really appreciate any likes, follows, subscribes, all that good stuff. But we're going to jump into it tonight. So again, our previous episodes, we broke out kind of like the off-ball linebackers into a separate episode. So you're going to see some names here that kind of, if we're talking true position and whatnot, kind of blend things a little bit. So you've got edge rushers as well as your straight up defensive end, defensive lineman on this list here. So those of you watching on the YouTube channel will see the list is right in front of us here. Audio only folks, we will obviously go through each name. So we're going to start at the very top with the big fancy names. That sound all right?
It sounds beautiful to me. It sounds superb. And might I say, by the way, this is how it should be. All right, these are edge rushers. These aren't.
Yeah.
We are not looping in Micah Parsons with the Bobby Wagners of the world. They're dramatically different players.
Yeah. Quick side tangent. If you're playing on like Yahoo, this isn't going to do a whole lot for you, because I did a couple Yahoo drafts with IDPs over the weekend, and I wanted to blow my brains out.
Yeah.
They're missing players. I mean, one of the guys that we're going to talk about towards the bottom here, Will McDonald, a first-round rookie pick, doesn't even exist as a player that you can draft on your team.
I could only imagine your anger at that.
For that name especially, yes, I was losing my mind. So some of these platforms, NFL.com, I've heard people having a lot of challenges with position designation. So again, this is where we don't like to pound the table for this, but it is important if you're really trying to get deep into IDP, especially doing dynasty leagues and whatnot. Picking your platform is really important, and we are big fans of both Sleeper and the MFL, My Fantasy League platforms, if you're going to be using IDP. ESPN's actually not terrible, because you can actually they've given you options where you can do true position like DT, DE, and all the 5 groups, but they've also like given you an edge designation, as well as you can do the just big 3 categories. So ESPN's actually come a long way with their league setups when it comes to IDP. So they come in as a close third for me as far as platforms go right now. So just wanted to let the good people know about that before we dive in here. So you can see, again, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see there is basically a giant first tier of 5 names. So in tier 1, we have the likes of Micah Parsons, Nick Bosa, Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, and TJ Watt. And Mike, it looks like so I've left up, we had a handful of staff members rank and tier these guys out. But I've left up myself, you, and my normal co-host, Matt, just so you can see where we may have differed there. But we are a clean sweep, 5 for 5, 3 for 3 on this. So you agree there's just one giant first tier, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think what defines a tier and what defines the first tier, especially, is you can justify each one of these people going off as the IDP one for the edge position. Obviously,
Facts.
who that's going to be, depending on your
Mhm.
league scoring to an extent. But you got Micah Parsons, whose talent speaks for himself. We're hoping we get more snaps on the edge, which can mean more sacks, more splash plays, although maybe less tackles. We're not
Right.
concerned because of how good he is. Nick Bosa is coming off a Defensive Player of the Year. Myles Garrett, I think, can lead the league in sacks this year under Jim Schwartz. Max Crosby racks up near triple-digit tackles like no other, which is ridiculous. And TJ Watt is Defense Player of the Year if he
Yeah.
wasn't hurt as well with a partially torn pec. So these guys have all made their hay. They're all proven. We know how high
Mhm.
their ceiling is, and we know how high their floor is because
Right.
short of injury, these guys aren't going to hurt you.
Yeah, exactly. These are the studs, and the drafting advice here is just get the last one that's available out of this tier. Don't be the person, making Michael Parsons the very first IDP selected in your draft way ahead of anyone else or thinking that you're going to start a run. That is my advice because I hate when I see that. And you say we're not concerned. I'm a little bit concerned about Michael Parsons this year.
I know you are.
Yeah,
I
I've
know
gone into
you're a
this
little bit
before. I think the tackle floor is gone based on his full transition to playing pretty much directly on the defensive line as an edge rusher. So I'm really worried about tackle floor. We're going to need him to have a near record-setting year in sacks to justify being a player of that caliber that people are reaching for as the first IDP in drafts. I am not by any means, let me be clear, not advocating he is a do not draft player. He is a do not reach, do not make him the first IDP selected player. That is what I'm trying to be very clear about. I still love him. If it goes Bosa, Garrett, Crosby, Watt, and Parsons is available to me at a value to an extent all day, give me him. But just don't reach for him as that very first player is really the message I've been trying to drive home for multiple episodes here to any loyal listeners. You might be getting sick of hearing this point, but to any new people, I gotta just make it clear.
Yeah, it's tough for him because I could reasonably see him drop in tackles from that 63 number he had. He could drop to 50. He could drop to
Yeah.
45 even. I think that's totally possible.
Mm-hmm.
I do still think that Dallas is going to move him around. I think Dan Quinn is very
Okay.
creative with how he uses those plays, and occasionally he's going to just make plenty of tackles in the run game. I think he's still going to be that low 50s tackle, which isn't a huge drop off from last year. And if we're
Okay.
getting higher sack numbers than 13 and a half, which he's posted for back-to-back years now, we're
Right.
expecting a year 3 jump here.
Mm-hmm.
You get 15 sacks, even just 1.5 more, that easily offsets,
Mm-hmm.
5 to 10 missed tackles. And sure,
Sure.
that's spread across multiple games versus one that you might be getting a sack in, but one sack increase I'm talking about as close to his floor given the talent that we have there. So I'm all with you. And to go through tiers again, if you guys don't totally understand what that means, let's say you're sitting at the 9th pick in a round and you're looking at the three teams in front of you, or the 10, 11, and 12, those three teams, none of them have an IDP.
Right.
You think each of them could take one before they go. They're not going to double up. So they each take one and three go off the board. You waited, you took an offensive piece, they take their IDP, they take three offense players as opposed to six, and then you end up getting the IDP that's in the same tier. They take
Right.
Parsons, Bosa, Garrett, you end up with Crosby, and you end up
Mhm.
just as happy as if you took them earlier, and you get three more offensive players to pick from. So I don't know if I explained that perfectly, but tiers are, again, a great way to break down your draft.
Yeah, they're basically, now we strongly advocate, make your own both rankings and tiers.
Sure.
And that's a big piece of this. Don't just, grab ours and make them gospel. Take ours and massage them a little bit to your own, projections and feelings. That's really the best way to do it. And yes, the idea of tiers being you're okay missing out on, let's say, you of course then you sort of rank the guys within the tiers to your preference as well. But what you're essentially doing is saying, okay, if these four guys go, and there's the bottom guy in the tier, I'm okay getting that last guy in the tier, and then moving along. But I also am trying my best not to miss out on him either. So that's kind of the whole purpose of tiers here. So we essentially say that the value of Parsons, Bosa, Garrett, Crosby, and Watt are essentially all the same. You should be happy with one of any of them. Of course, if you want to double tap and have elite, double tier one guys, if your draft, allows for that, and you're happy with your offensive pieces, of course that would be great strategy as well. But essentially that you want to try to leave with one of the guys from the tiers, and even if it's the bottom one, that's okay. So that's kind of the point where we're hammering home. And I think it's very justified that all 5 of these guys are together. I mean, since they're the studs, if there's any concerns, right, we could talk about Bosa and his contract on that. I know you just wrote an article about that. So can you shed some light on some of your takeaways for the Nick Bosa and the holdout situation we're facing?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that I think has almost gone underreported because there's not much to talk about when the holdout's happening, because no one's there. He's not there. He's not playing with the 49ers right now. It almost feels like it's been a little bit swept under the rug. So I'm not worried with Bosa. I feel like this is a player that they cannot live without. I think the Chiefs believe they can live without Chris Jones, for example, because they have Patrick Mahomes. The 49ers do not have such luxuries as Patrick Mahomes. As much as they may want to believe in Brock Purdy, they have a rookie contract guy. They can afford to splurge for Nick Bosa, figure out the financials because they can't lose him. This deal gets done before week 1, and I would be really, really surprised. And Kyle Shanahan recently said in a press conference, as well as defensive coordinator Steve Wilks said, this is what they expected. This is the timeline. This is how things go. You have a star who wants a lot of money, Joe Burrow doing the same thing in Cincinnati. The deal is going to eventually get done because Nick Bosa is not going to be leaving the 49ers anytime soon.
Yeah, we don't see studs at these positions that the NFL values, actually continuing their holdout into the season very often. Now, running backs and kind of on the defensive side, seems like the linebacker might be going the way of the running back from a contract standpoint. But man, these important positions on the defensive line, in tackles, offensive tackles, quarterbacks, wide receivers, unless you're just completely out of your mind with your value, it's not going to carry into the regular
We saw
season.
Christian Wilkins and his holdout today as well.
Nice.
So that's another type of card off the table. If they were waiting for maybe him to set a number, you take that factor out and eases up maybe potentially a little bit. So all that to be said, I'm not worried about Bosa missing time. I have far more concerns about Chris Jones, especially after the Chiefs traded for a defensive tackle today, but that's for another video.
Yeah, when we do defensive tackle tiers, which we do have. I don't know if we're going to get to that before the season starts, but I think the people will be okay missing out on defensive tackles potentially. One more thing on Bosa that I've noticed is he's got that little, at least on I think ESPN, I'm pretty sure Yahoo, maybe some of the other platforms, he's got that nice little red O next to his name, and people just see that and they get scared. So Bosa, I'm finding, is being pushed down. So he right now could almost be flipped to the bottom of this tier rankings wise, and you might be able to settle, quote unquote, for Nick Bosa because of the human nature of seeing that little red out circle. So that's another interesting point. Do you think I have anything negative to go for either Garrett, Crosby, or Watt? Watt, obviously injury concerns, getting a little older, but you know what, the ceiling's so damn high. I don't even think about that.
You're not going to force a kind of negative out of me with these.
Okay, that's fine.
The reason we have them in tier 1 is because, in my genuine opinion, none of these 5 guys will bust unless injury happens. I could see the route for Parsons, but we're betting on the talent to outweigh that, and I think that's a fair bet to make. TJ Watt has his running mate back. Alex Highsmith's still there. Watt was better with Highsmith on the field in the last couple of years, so that helps. Crosby will hopefully get some help with Tyree Wilson helping out on the other end. And that's the type of help, again, that he needs, but it doesn't matter because he's already proven he doesn't need it to be great for fantasy. So, and I've already talked about my my belief in Myles Garrett under Jim Schwartz in this system and the additions that Cleveland made all along the defensive line. After last year, no player besides him recorded 3 sacks or more. So,
Oh, they had Jadeveon Clowney.
yeah, he wasn't even the guy
Was
with 3 sacks. That was
overrated.
Stephen Bryan from a million years ago, the Jaguars. Yeah,
On
defensive
the
tackle.
interior.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Ugh.
that stuck with me all these months, and I do believe Myles Garrett's due for a big year. Very, very excited for all 5 of these guys.
Yeah, these guys are studs. Draft with confidence. I'm moving into tier 2. It's a smaller tier. We again go for a clean sweep for our particular ranking. So we've got Brian Burns from the Panthers, Jalen Phillips from the Dolphins, and Hassan Reddick from my Philadelphia Eagles. All tier 2 guys. For me, it kind of makes sense. You got any initial thoughts on this tier?
Yeah, and it honestly, as much as I said all 5 of the first tier were unanimous, not
Yeah,
quite the same with the second tier because
this was hard.
I view tiers within tiers almost to an extent here.
Yeah,
I believe in Jalen Phillips. I
yeah.
firmly do. We've all talked about it. Everyone's expecting the big leap, and every
Mhm,
metric suggests he's about to do exactly that. But he
mhm.
hasn't done it yet.
Right.
Meanwhile, Brian Burns to me is ready to make that tier 1 leap, and he is right there. And I was really struggling to not put him in that tier 1 after
Mhm.
years of seeing what he can do, and we are perceiving that he has a cap ceiling. I don't know
Right.
if that's the case.
Mhm,
Hassan Reddick, we have already seen be that tier
mhm.
1 type of guy last year. And
Right.
honestly, I'm not that was the harder name to leave off
Yeah.
the tier 1
Yeah.
because we've already seen it. Nothing much has changed. We lose Hargreaves, we bring in Jalen Carter. There's still
Mhm.
internal pressure. This is still the Eagles. You still have Josh Sweat on the other side. They're so
Yeah.
deep that Derek Burnett wants out again. It, it's
Good.
it's
I'll be
it's
retired.
I don't see a world that those guys don't work out.
Yeah.
So I'm very high on Reddick, very high on Burns, and I love the breakout potential of Phillips, who's probably the best value of all of tier 2.
Mhm. Yeah, we could probably go quickly on this one too. So Brian Burns, initially I had some concerns because I believe the defensive base scheme is kind of flipping from a 4-3 to a 3-4. Now we know that plenty of defensive coordinators mix these schemes nowadays, so that I probably shouldn't have reacted as much as I initially did to that. And I've found people that I respect that really know these schemes and systems say that that could actually be better for Burns' skill set. So I'm going to take them at their word there and not be worried about Burns at all, drafting him with confidence. Jalen Phillips, like you said, just we need to see it this year, but we think that, again, scheme wise, defensive coordinator guy wise, we think we have the right guy in there to put him in a position to achieve that breakout. We think Vic Fangio is going to, get him in a spot, getting to the quarterback. Whereas I believe last year, when I was listening to, I think it was our good friends over at the IDP show breaking down his advanced stats from last year, he was like dropping back in coverage for some reason, and maybe there's a reason that defensive coordinator is no longer there. Just doesn't seem to fit his skill set at all. So yes, we anticipate the breakout coming for Phillips. And yeah, Hassan Reddick, only being slightly pessimistic is he going to be as efficient? That whole defense and defensive line was just record-setting efficiency last year in getting to the quarterback. So I just have a little bit of worry that he's going to reach that number. Now, if he gets 12 to 14 sacks instead of 16 and a half, am I going to be upset? No, I'm going to be very happy with that. It's just that 16 is what had him in that tier last year. And it's tough to think he's going to get back there 100% this year. So,
Yeah, and that's a fair concern. And to touch on Brian Burns again, because I do think that cap ceiling is the biggest talk. John Macri of PFF, great IDP follow out there, released a great thread back in July when I wrote about it for our newsletter here, which is free to sign up in the link in my Twitter bio here with the IDP guys. So I wrote about Brian Burns in July, and partially that was based on John's findings that these defensive linemen, we kind of knew this already, but they really break out in those year 4, the year 5, the year 6. Brian Burns is going into his 4th year. It's been nothing but amazing ever since he entered. You have that massive boost in defensive coordinator quality. Ejiro Rivera worked wonders with Denver. And while the scheme changes a little bit, that leaves up in the air. That's a question mark. I trust Rivera to get it done in terms of what he uses his talent to get to. So I
Good.
believe Brian Burns is going to have a good year. I think the
Yeah.
3-4 can even help his tackle numbers to an extent.
Right.
And what I really liked about him was he had 17 tackles for a loss last year. The only
Beautiful.
three guys with more than that, Steve, Max
Yeah.
Crosby, Nick Bosa, Myles Garrett.
Pretty
All
good company.
that in tier 1. So
Yeah.
that leap it's right there. It's
Yeah.
very possible to me. We've already seen signs of it. And I think as he grows into that, we're going to start eventually seeing that leap. Whether it's this year or next, I don't know, which is why he's tier 2. But that potential is 100% there.
Excellent. Awesome. All right. Before we jump into tier 3, just going to do some quick plugging here. Like you mentioned about the newsletter, if you visit the website, www.idpguys.org, the very first thing smacks you right in the face is signing up for Big Mike's newsletter. And I got to tell you, it's awesome. You put some amazing work into that. And if you're looking for just quick hitting news and updates every week, tidbits, even if you don't want to become a full-fledged subscriber, I highly suggest signing up for this newsletter to get you top-notch information that, quite frankly, probably should need to be paid for. But, that's our, way of just giving you guys a little taste of the great info that we put out here. So, yeah, so that's a really awesome product that Mike puts out. We do have specific redraft rankings for you in season if you become a subscriber. So I wanted to drop a quick code in here. The special for IDP Plus listeners and viewers, it is just simply IDP +pod as the discount code will get you, I believe, 10% off a membership to the website. So you get all our in-season articles and rankings and tools. We have a snap count tool that we just deployed, which is I'm really excited for, amongst custom scoring tools, of course, dynasty rankings all year, and your weekly redraft rankings for offense and defense. So that's our slogan, right? We've got offense too. If you're playing in mixed leagues, you can just come right to IDP Guys, and we are sort of a one-stop shop for offense and defense. So I appreciate anyone, signing up, and use that code IDP +pod for a discount off of membership. So, okay, if we dive into tier 3 here, it's quite a larger tier. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a little bit larger than tier 1. We got 6 players. So we've got Aiden Hutchinson from the Lions, Danielle Hunter from the Vikings, Matthew Judon from the Patriots, Kayvon Thibodeau for the Giants, Joey Bosa for the Chargers, and kind of a surprise name to me in here, Uchenna Nwosu from the Seattle Seahawks. So big tier here. Mike, do you have any initial thoughts on this tier?
Yeah, I do. And you're going to have to explain yourself as well as Matt to me here, Mr. Dynasty Santa. Aiden Hutchinson is the name that stands out here, as well as Daniel Hunter, but I'll focus on Hutchinson for now. Listen, number 2 pick last year. The production was 100% sporadic last year. I acknowledge that.
Yeah.
But we you don't view him in that tier 2 of I view him right next to that Jalen Phillips of the breakout, the next step that I expect to see. Now, I'm 100% aware of the point I just made about it takes time for edge rushers. It takes year 4 sometimes for those guys to really hit their prime. And I'm asking year 2 of someone here, but Aiden Hutchinson not being in that tier 2 to me is a little bit surprising based on the ADP that we're currently seeing in draft. So talk me through your thoughts there, Steve.
All right. So admittedly, this was done a few weeks ago. I actually just did a pod earlier today with our good friend Jace Abbey for the IDP after show.
Love Jace.
Yeah, so that should be coming out probably later today or even tomorrow. And as we talk through Aiden Hutchinson, I'm like, I like him. I do like him a lot. So admittedly, I probably think I might amend this, in real time. And I could see him moving into tier 2. Now, my pushback is, where would you have put him last year after the season? So with what we knew happened, what tier would you have him in tier 2 or tier 3 after last year with the kind of lumpy scoring? Huge game, 0 game, huge game, 0 game.
Yeah,
what would you have done last year?
And I think that's a good point to make, because I probably would have put him in that tier 3. because I would have
Right.
looked back and said, listen, good flashes, great flashes, but we had a 3-sack game really prop up that total.
Uh-huh.
And, we had a pick in the end. So we had like what, 2
Yeah.
interceptions on the season
Uh-huh.
that helped it out, which
Yeah.
let's be honest, chances are he doesn't have any this
Right.
coming season. So
Mm.
there's 100% points that pull against him, but I think if you take, we took the offseason, we look at those event mismatches, we look at the win rate, and we look at what he's putting on in camp, which is all reports are incredibly positive. You had the late
Mhm.
breakout of James Houston that should help, who has also had a great camp. I'm
Very true.
hopeful that the entire Detroit defense that is completely reformed takes the next step. And if this secondary, the added Cam Sutton, the added CJ Gardner Johnson, Brian Branch, just name a
Mhm.
few, if they're
Right.
able to hold plays just a little bit longer, what does that
Good
do for
point.
Aiden Hutchinson?
Because my very next question was going to be, at least on the defensive line, what has changed? Because not much, right? But yes, James Houston probably playing more snaps is going to help. So I didn't think of that. But I was focused on the defensive line. But you're right. With all these other additions, hopefully that secondary is exponentially better
It
than it
can't be
was
much
last
worse.
year.
It can't
Yeah,
be much
exactly.
worse.
We can't. Yeah, you're
They get
totally
Tracy
right.
Walker back. They add Jack Campbell into the mix. It's a
Right.
completely new defense. Like from
Yeah.
top to bottom, they've really reformed it, and
Yeah.
that's really something to be optimistic about.
Yeah. So I think he is absolutely at there's a reason he's at the very top of the tier three because he's sort of like tier 2.5. So yeah, I think a real time call could be made there to say he probably belongs in tier two, just projecting, building on last season. So I can totally get down with that. Yeah, looking at Hunter, we've got new defensive coordinator there, Brian Flores. Be interesting to see if that helps or hurts Hunter. He lost to Darius Smith, who he was playing without at times last year due to injuries anyway. Replaced with Marcus Davenport. Now, Cam Jordan worked just fine across from Marcus Davenport. We had a flash for 2/3 of a season 2 years ago out of his first 4 or 5 years in the league. So this is going to be a big year from him, but let's hope that he can maybe at least draw some attention for Hunter. Matthew Judon, in the New England system is just pencil him in for 12 sacks. Yeah, the tackle for is a little lower than most, but not much negative to say on him. I'm going to skip over Thibodeau quickly. Bosa, your really concern is just injury, and is he losing
That's
steam due to age, right? And then we can okay. Well, let's talk about Nuosu. I'm kind of surprised to see him up here now, even though So I had him as a tier 4 guy. You and Matt had him in 3. I had him as a tier 4 guy. So I think I'm just a little. It took him on his second deal to really get going. Now, much like Matthew Judon did, he was a very similar case to Nuosu, where his first years with Baltimore were showing flashes and promising, but he didn't really break out in Baltimore. Same thing with Nuosu in San Diego, showed flashes and then fully broke out in Seattle. So maybe the system has found a home for him there, but I feel like I'm just a little skeptical on Nuosu being that high. So
Yeah.
how about you touch on him quickly?
It's fair to be skeptical because this is a 1-year sample size, and not just a 1-year
Exactly.
sample size, but one that came on a 1-year contract deal. That if Nuosa did not ball out last year, he doesn't get paid. He becomes the next Jadeveon Clowney floating around the league, and it's the Yannick Ngakwe's, and
Yeah.
it's not an envious lifestyle. So I firmly believe that contract years do play a role. So that is my biggest hesitation with him, but
Mhm.
listen, nothing's really changed.
Yeah.
It's the same situation. The secondary might have got a bit better. You add Julian Love, maybe you get Jamal Adams. You bring back
Mhm.
Bobby Wagner. You add Devon Witherspoon.
Mhm.
There's the entire defense is better, so I don't see a reason to project a step back for
Mhm.
Nwosu yet. Because why should I? So
Right.
maybe you can tell me why, and maybe we are going to chalk it up to contract year buffs, but
Right.
I don't see any reason why he should be taking a step back when the scheme's the same. There's extra pieces around in the secondary to prolong type of situations. You're going to have more passing downs, I think, because Seattle, I think, is going to be even better this year with all the improvements they made on both sides of the ball. So
Yeah.
I like it. And if they get anything out of Boy Mafe on the other side, not going to hurt. Not going to hurt.
Well, I think that's where I'm most concerned. So it looks like he played 904 snaps, 78%. I feel like that's a lot in that Seattle
That
system
is
of
a lot.
rotations, right? And they, there's been injuries. Daryl Taylor's there. He had a nice little breakout season fighting injury. They drafted a second round edge rusher in Derek Hall out of Auburn. So I guess my only concern lies with the playing time and the efficiency. Is he going to be as efficient with that many sacks on that many snaps? Is he going to get the opportunity? So and how many tackles? Yeah, he had a decent tackle for 66 combined and 12 for loss. So yeah, I'm probably just. I guess I'm probably just stuck on the name and stuck on the prior lack
Slow
of
start.
production. Yeah, in San Diego, but I think that maybe that was just lack of opportunity. So
Yeah, I mean,
um,
it's 26 QB hits last year and only getting 9.5 sacks. To me, that doesn't, if anything, it screams
yeah,
positive regression, closer to negative regression. So
true.
there's a reason, like the Derek Hall pick, the Boy Mafe hype. To me, that's
Yeah.
all going to come at the expense of Daryl Taylor, who
Okay.
we want to talk about 1 year outlier. I think that's the 1 year outlier who's
Yeah,
also
that's
fighting
fair.
injuries right now in camp. I think that's
Mhm.
that's the afterthought here, and I think Lewis is
Yeah.
going to have his side locked down. Could regress a little bit in the snap count because that is high. That's a good point. But I do think 26 QB hits that doesn't just happen, in my opinion.
Right.
That's a drive, and again, maybe it's that contract year drive, but it's a drive that results in a lot of fantasy points last year, and I'm not gonna just act like he did it all for the money and it's not gonna work out. Because sometimes these guys do take time. Sometimes it does take a change of scenery. Maybe Marcus
Very
Davenport
good.
is going to be this year's Uchenna also. Who knows?
There you go.
If
That would
anyone
be
would, that's a
nice.
perfect example for it. You got a first round talent there. Just
Yeah.
couldn't put it all together.
We
Yeah, it's a
keep
good,
betting on
good,
him.
good guy working across from him. But
I
that's
know.
again for another video.
So I will jump into my bullish take on Kayvon Thibodeau. So I had him up in the tier 2.
Good for you.
Again, I think we're kind of. I'm in the same boat with Hutchinson, where I think he's belongs in sort of like 2.5. I think, and this is also a carryover of my dynasty rankings and take that I think Thibodeau is better for fantasy than Aiden Hutchinson. So I think this is my just hubris carrying over from dynasty into the redraft year in saying that I want Thibodeau maybe more than Hutchinson. But again, being truly, acknowledging those facts of why I have him there, I really think him and Hutchinson are kind of like in between tiers 2 and 3. I don't know. I'm just think Thibodeau's a beast. I think he's got that incredible defensive line around him. Dexter Lawrence, Leonard Williams in the middle, back outside to Azeez Ojulari, and then a handful of decently talented guys who can come in spells as edge rushers in like your Darian Beavers, your Jihad Wards of the world.
Isaiah
So
Simmons.
then now Isaiah Simmons, right? Yeah. So I just think they're super deep. Um, and I think that's going to allow him to, not see double teams as much. And if he stays healthy, he played 14 games last year. He reached 79% of snaps though in those 14 games. So I think he really did underperform based on those numbers in his rookie year. And I just think he puts it together this year, and we see a really a true breakout year in year 2 for him. So that's more of a gutalytics thing, I think.
Yeah, and let me cool it off. Let me provide the other side of the coin because I love the talent. I have no doubts about the talent,
Yeah.
and I'll even start this off with a moneymaker for you, Steve.
Okay.
Because part of my concern, and I don't factor this into a ton of things, but you look at Vegas's expectations, and Vegas does know all. Do you want to guess what his sack line is right now? I've already bet the over for the record. But
So if he had 4 last year, and Vegas I feel like feel like Vegas stinks when it comes to IDP stuff.
It's
I
all
feel like
over the place.
yeah.
Some of it is good, some of it's bad. You have no idea. But
I'll
if you
say
want to,
5.
it's 5.75.
Wow. Okay.
So you got a marginal 1.5, 2 sack increase that Vegas is tentatively projecting here.
Okay.
And that's not going to live up to a tier 2 type of situation. He's closer
Absolutely
to tier
not.
4 than tier 3 for me.
Oh.
And my concern here is kind of the same point that you laid out. And I think that's the beautiful thing about IDP is that there's so many different ways to look at the same statement. Because, he might face less double teams, but that's because they're going to be moving so many guys into the same spot that he likes to occupy. I think they are going to use Isaiah Simmons in a lot of pass rushing roles. I think Darren Beavers could mix in there.
Right.
And I wouldn't rule out adding even someone else to the mix. Maybe you see Michael McFadden rushing up from random spots. Like Wing Martindale works miracles with his linebackers and how he uses them. I think we're just going to see a little bit of inconsistency of how many pass rushing snaps we're going to get out of Thibodeau. And when we get that, you need the TFLs and you need the tackles to really fulfill that. And I think they could. I think you could also be hyper efficient on the sack level. You could have, 15 QB hits and 8 sacks. That's possible. You could be hyper efficient like that because, like you, I also believe in the talent, but I also don't like betting on hyper efficiency. So he's someone that I haven't looked at. I haven't looked at in drafts really. The guys that my eyes gloss over a little bit, not because I don't like them, but because the cost is just a little bit too high for me.
That's what I was going to touch on too. Yeah, he's
a leap that he hasn't made yet. Similar to Jalen Phillips in a way, but not as much because Thibodeau's going much higher than Phillips.
Yeah, Thibodeau's got that name value, that draft capital value. He's fresher in people's mind from just being a rookie. He had that similar to Hutchinson. He had like one monster game in, I believe it was even during the fantasy playoffs. So like people remember that stuff and project on it. And I'm probably doing some of that, to be honest. So we don't do take lock here at the IDP guys or the IDP Plus podcast. So like I totally think I'm just super bullish on him. Probably that was an overranking. I could probably correct that.
Yeah, just stick to your guns, man.
Oh, I'm not going to. I'm going to stick to my guns. I'm not going to correct it, but I probably could if I wanted to take a second shot at this. So, is there anyone else in this tier that you want to touch on, or
of the names you mentioned? I'll just do a couple quick bullet points here. Joey Bosa feels like that exact name that is going to prove us also wrong this year. Because I have no doubts about the talent. I don't think he's slowed down at all. It's just that he missed time last year. He was playing through injury. The entire Chargers defense was getting hurt, and what else is new? But every time he's out there, when we have a healthy season, we see greatness, and we know Joey Bosa was arguably just as good of a prospect as his brother, if not better when they were coming out, despite Bosa going higher. So Joey Bosa is a great talent. So I think he's someone that, if I'm taking my shot on, my if I'm going to pay up for my deal too, I want Joey Bosa to kind of be that. I don't want him as my one, but if I want to pay up, I kind of want that explosiveness of Bosa. The other name I want to throw out there, Judon, is scary to me. I have him at 2. I do have him in tier 2. But I recognize that if the sacks slightly dip, you are going to be in pain for way too many weeks. So the tackle floor just isn't there, and eventually Bill Belichick's going to pull the rug on us. Eventually he will pull it out, and all of a sudden we're seeing Uche play more, and we're seeing, listen, I like Uche too. We're seeing, I don't know, Barmore line up on the edge for no reason. We see Keon White taking snaps, and they want to keep Judon fresh as the report. Now, I don't think they can afford to do that, which is why I still think he's going to be tier 2. I still think they found a role for him that's perfect, and he found a spot role for him that's perfect.
Yeah.
But it is a scary floor. So of someone I have here in tier 2, that's someone I'm probably still not paying up for the price because I recognize how I might say he's a tier 2 player. His floor is falling into that tier 4 or 5. That isn't the same for Daniel Hunter or Ian Hutchinson or I guess even Thibodeau to an extent because the tackles will be there.
Yeah, very good, very good. All right, so let's move into tier 4. So tier 4 gets a little shrunken again, and we have our first rookie sighting in tier 4. So tier 4 contains the likes of Josh Sweat for the Eagles, Rashawn Gary for the Packers, Aziz Ojulari for the Giants, and Will Anderson Jr., Houston Texans. I'd like to kick off with him if that's okay.
Oh, please do.
So he's a guy that you and me both have in tier
He's
3.
not a tier 4 player, man. He's not a tier 4 player.
Yet our good friend Matt Record has him in tier 5. So Matt's going to have some explaining to do. I think this may have been victim to when we first set this up when we were planning to do these tiers.
No.
It was
The
probably
Matt
a month ago.
Breaking yesterday.
You're not going to let him off the hook, huh?
Will Anderson. All right. At mrecord21 on Twitter. Can't stand Will Anderson. Yeah. That's
no. Well, I don't know why. I would love to know why, because I think he's just going to be a monster right out of the gate. I think he just landed with a perfect fit with D'Amico Ryans. I'm so excited because I think he's just going to use him everywhere. So I think we're going to have a tackle floor built in with Will Anderson and just an unlimited ceiling with sacks with the creativity and usage that D'Amico Ryans is going to give him. So I'm just ultra bullish. He is a Micah Parsons level talent, I believe. And let's hope that we see some more year one type usage for Will Anderson, like we did with Parsons in being that versatile, outside linebacker as well as, edge rusher. So that's kind of why I'm so bullish on Anderson.
Yeah, and one of the benefits to being on Houston, although there may not be many, is that you have those snaps. We might be talking about, we hope he gets the usage. We might be talking about Tyree Wilson. I hope he plays ahead of Chandler Jones, the old man. Yeah. But Will Anderson doesn't have those concerns because, A, he's an alpha. He's going to get it anyway. But he's also walking into a defensive line that is horrible. Horrible. And that's not great because he's going to get double teamed consistently through the back half of the season when he destroys the front half of the season. But I firmly believe in this talent. He is a better prospect than Micah Parsons was. He, to me, was a number 1 overall pick type of prospect. And I can't even emphasize how dominant he was in his junior season or his sophomore season. Again, as a sophomore, was unfathomably good. And he didn't fall off his senior year or his junior year, despite what some people said. He just got more attention. So I'm very in on Will Anderson to have. You brought up the point to have an impact similar to what Micah Parsons had. Maybe not the 80 tackle type of play that we saw, but maybe 60, like similar to what we saw from Parsons last year. I think it's possible. 63 tackles, 13 sacks. It's a little bit lofty, but I think 60 and 10 is very possible. Right. And I think that's more or less what we would get from an Owosu last year or something like that. And that's why we have him in tier 3.
And honestly, I might flip-flop him and Thibodeau tier-wise. I think Anderson deserves way more to be in tier 2 for me than Thibodeau. So I could definitely flip-flop them. Thibodeau
I'm drinking the Kool-Aid with the D'Amico Ryans connection.
Yeah, same.
I really am. It's too perfect. This defense isn't great, but it's got some young pieces that Ryans can really work himself into. So this was the guy that they traded up and gave up their first 4, which is going to be a very interesting deal when we get to draft season next year. But it was I was one of the few people that didn't hate it because I believed Will Anderson was generational. And the Texans wouldn't have done that if they believed anything else.
And that's going to help them not be picking in potentially the top 5 next year, like a lot of people just automatically assume. I don't know. You're going to have to research this for me, what the Texans win total is, but I don't even need to see it. And I would probably bet the over on that because I think they're
guess it's about 5.5 right now. I don't have that.
That makes sense.
Pretty good handle on mentally about where those type of lines are. I wouldn't expect it to be. Wouldn't be higher than. I can't imagine it would be 6.5. So I'd say 5.5.
Titans are probably going to be putrid. The Colts are looking not great.
I have no idea.
I think the Colts are in worse shape than the Texans, to be perfectly honest.
I agree with that.
Richardson's needs way more development than a CJ Stroud does. I think the offensive weapons around Stroud are significantly better than what the Colts have. So it wouldn't surprise me if Houston is second in that division at the end of the year. Yeah, maybe it's with a 8-10, what would it be, 8-9 record or something like that.
Even
But
7-10 could get it done. Who knows?
yeah, so I don't think they're going to be picking as high as people think, and I think that trade was totally justified. And I'm really excited to see Will Anderson. So so a couple of guys that I think, I almost think, I mean, give me Josh Sweat, Rashawn Gary, and Azeez Ojulari all over Nwosu, personally, and I think that's why some, especially for Sweat, my tiers reflect that opinion. But yeah, I mean, all these guys are really good and have really high ceilings. I mean, Rashawn Gary was on pace for 12 and a half sacks last year before he got injured. So
he's tough to rank. He is so tough to rank because I was so impressed with him at the start of last year, and I liked him as a prospect. I was disappointed with how slow he started, and he was dominant. He was up there in Defensive Player of the Year odds based off that first 4 or 5 games. And he slowed off for a couple, and then he obviously tore his ACL.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, the reports are positive. He's looking like he's on that week 1 track. Should probably be out there. I'm a little bit scared about what the start looks like.
Okay.
If all of a sudden he gets off to a slow start, how much patience do I have in IDP that the price I paid for him is going to feel good enough? And that's my hesitation, especially with IDP and how I really approach this, is getting the value relative to IDP because ADP, all these DP, But it's a lot of issues like that where I'm trying to not to pay up for players that have so much risk to them. And to me, Rashawn Gary, while I believe in the talent, I don't know how well he's going to rebound from this injury. I think it could take time. It could take a few weeks. It could take a month. And all of a sudden at that point, what's the situation? Am I picking up someone else? Have I found someone else I like better? Did I draft someone later that is doing more or less the same thing? And then am I going to trust him when he, starts having one good game and then falls off again? I worry about what 2023 looks like. I think it could be just a little bit too inconsistent. The Josh Sweat stands out to me though. That is the one name of this bunch outside of Will Anderson who I have in tier 3 that I will come closest to putting in that group because I think both of us are on the same page about the talent. We like the situation around him. We have a scheme even without Jonathan Gannon that has routinely produced top tier edge rushing players for IDP. And Josh Sweat being one of those players. So he's definitely someone that's a little bit closer to that 3.5 than 4.5, so to say.
Exactly. Yeah, let's see. Josh Sweat, broke out in a big way with 11 sacks. Tackles remain the same. So I guess that's probably why the other rankers here average him out into tier 4. The tackle floor isn't great. He's never hit 50 tackles. And as far as snaps go, he was hyper efficient with the 11 sacks on 56% of snaps. He actually played more snaps the previous year in 2021 at 62%.
I do think he'll play more this year, though.
I do too.
I think he'll play more this year. And also another example, I'm just honestly mentally noting this as much as I can about another player that broke out 4 or 5 years into the league. That flashed over those times, but fits that mold of when we're expecting those guys to finally hit their peak. And maybe it's not a flash in the pan because maybe that's just how long it takes. So you got a lot of guys on this list alone, that took time to do that. Rashawn Gary took, 3 years to do that. Nwosu took years and a change of scenery. So forth. Judon, was always good, but really took the leap with a change of scenery and so forth.
Right.
Hassan Reddick being the king of change of scenery.
And we're seeing that now with Azeez Ojulari and kind of why he makes this list. Coming into year 3 now, battled a lot of injuries last year, only played 7 games, but had 5.5 sacks in those 7 games. So he was pretty darn close to almost a sack a game, whereas His previous year, he played 17 games and had 8 sacks. So he was actually, averaging out to crush that number from the previous year. So if he just simply stays healthy, that's why banking on the upside, I would give me the upside of an Azeez Ojulari over maybe the safer play of a Uchenna Nwosu. So I'm excited for him on that defensive line with the Giants.
That's another guy. It's tough for me to get a gear on because I don't know if I'm buying into the talent. I wasn't incredibly high. I wasn't overly impressed with his first year. Despite having the 8 sacks, they only came on 12 QB hits. He did it again this year with, I think it was 7 QB hits.
Yeah.
Which again is good in 7 games, but he got 5.5 sacks on that. It's uber
hyper efficiency
that Wink Martindale can certainly bring out for, in second year in the system type of thing. But I just have question marks that happen when I have guys that have solely made their hay on that. And especially when I'm not sold on the talent. I believe in Josh Sweat's ability to get to the passer. I'm not totally there yet with Azeez.
Fair enough. And that brings us to our final tier. So there's plenty of guys that you might be thinking to yourself like belong in these lists. We kind of just grabbed some from each to be able to talk about and not be here for 5 hours with you. So we wanted to incorporate 2 of the first round, 2 more of the first round rookies that were taken in this year's draft. So in tier 5, we have the rookies, Will McDonald from the Jets and Tyree Wilson from the Raiders. Now, again, if you are a loyal listener to this pod, you know my thoughts about Will McDonald. I will temper my excitement and those thoughts here as I will just simply say I'm very bullish on him, mainly for Dynasty. Year 1, I will be, a little pragmatic and say, maybe it's not to the moon right off the bat in year 1. They're heavy rotation, especially on the edge for the Jets. So he's got that working against him. What he's got working for him is a friendly system in general with Robert Saleh. He, handpicked Will McDonald into this wide 9 system, literally told him that on the phone. It's one of my favorite nuggets of information from the draft is that, when he was talking to him, he's like, we're going to get you out of your college system into my wide 9. So it seems like he, the head coach for the Jets, had an eye for this guy. Did they trade up? I can't remember if they traded up to get him or not.
Think so.
But he was a middle.
While you talk.
All right. I know he was like the 15th picker. So smack dab in the middle. Maybe I'm confusing. They traded last year back into the first, I think, to get Jermaine Johnson, who is another potential breakout guy this year. But I just think, he specifically scouted McDonald for this system. So I think he's gonna produce.
Yeah. They technically actually traded down because of the Rodgers situation. So they moved from 13 to 15. Saleh came out and said what he would say anyway. Said he would have taken him at 13 anyway. Which
right.
Whether you believe it or not, a 2-pick difference probably.
Yeah.
Cares, but
not.
He's still getting his guy.
Not breaking any backs there.
I've watched a lot of New York Jets preseason this summer, and the biggest takeaway I've had is why is Will McDonald playing in the third quarter right now? Because he is obliterating everyone that's in his way. If he plays in the second quarter, he's obliterating everyone that's in his way. But the reason why he's playing in the second and third quarter is because Jermaine Johnson's also doing that. Because they still have Carl Lawson. And that rotation, like you said, is so freaking deep.
Yeah.
And I think they are going to be without Carl Lawson next year. I think they're going to be without probably John Franklin Myers will be completely out of that room. I think 2024 could be great for Will McDonald because I have seen nothing but promising things from him. But the reason I have him in tier 5, and truthfully I would put him even lower, is I just don't think he's going to play enough. And I was very high on Jermaine Johnson too, and I had the same high hopes for his rookie year. Just didn't really play. And I still like him. In fact, he's the guy that I would rather have than Will McDonald because I think he's just a year ahead in the system if we're talking from a redraft basis. But plenty of bright future ahead for Will McDonald. There's no hiding from him on the preseason tape if you just watch any of the Jet games because They shut out, they shut out the Patriots for a reason. They only allowed 13 points to the Bucks for a reason, and that's because of the defensive line.
Right. Yeah, I think the advice for redraft would be probably. Oh, again, if you're playing Yahoo, you can't even pick him. Apparently, super frustrating. Would be you're probably, unless you're playing like a really large
Crazy.
deep league, probably not drafting him, but keep him on a watch list. Keep your eyes on his snap counts, which become a subscriber to the IDP guys. We'll track that for you. We'll have that information every week for you. But I think, you just kind of got to keep your eye on him. Maybe don't invest a draft pick unless it's like a last round, but then you might be hanging on to him on your bench for a few weeks. So I think he might be more of a second half play as he gets acclimated to the league. Hopefully earns more playing time, based on his level of play. So that would be my advice for this year in redraft. Probably not actually drafting him, but definitely keeping your eye on him throughout the year. So the other guy from this tier, fellow rookie, Tyree Wilson from the Raiders. I believe, what pick was he? Mike, was he
6, 7?
Yeah, he was top 10, right?
Definitely
He was definitely top 10.
He went off the board at the 7th overall pick.
Okay.
Biggest Raiders, which is a little bit lower than some people thought he would go, a little bit lower than I thought he would go, but still right in the same.
He probably has a bit of a higher floor for redraft in this year. I think he'll be starting right away opposite Crosby because Chandler Jones is ancient. I think he's pretty much there as a locker room guy at this point. We saw him, it's nothing new that guys go to the Raiders for kind of a paycheck and tend to check out, especially if they're vets. So I think Wilson will be playing plenty of snaps right out of the gate. Just a matter of what his role is going to be and what kind of floor he brings to the table for you. So what do you think about Wilson?
Well, Steve, you're gonna hate me because I'm gonna disagree with most of what you just said.
Oh no!
My hot take here, right? Or not even hot. I don't know what's hot. I don't know what's cold. I don't know what's just right without Goldilocks here. I like Tyree Wilson. He was a raw prospect, and you have Chandler Jones on this team. Chandler Jones is still on it. He's apparently slimmed down. I don't expect Chandler Jones to have a revival, but I think the Raiders will.
Okay.
So I do think Chandler Jones is not going to take a backseat to this raw rookie that also missed some time this past month with an injury, missed some of this camp. And so did Chandler Jones, but Chandler Jones doesn't need to. He'll jump right in without missing a beat. I just think that we're going to see Chandler Jones too much to get reliable value from Wilson, where the snaps are just not going to be there as much.